I hope my screen is visible to all.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Good morning, all, and welcome to day 4 of this 1 week FDP program organized by St. Francis Institute of Management and Research in collaboration with GAD TLC of HRD, PMMM and MTT, SGTB, Khalsa College, University of Delhi under the scheme of PMMM and MTT, Ministry of Education, Government of India. I hope the sessions are going fruitful to everyone and a lot of learning is taking place.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, yes. We are keeping in mind the suggestions given by the participants and we are trying to incorporate those changes, whatever is in our hand. We are sending the recordings on the daily basis at the end of the day. That is what is a point which we try to make. PPTs, as informed earlier, also based on the permission received from the resource person, we are sharing the resource materials to you all. Till date, whatever sessions have taken place, we have sent the recording except for yesterday's pre-lunch session. So, as and when we receive the recording from GADTLC, we will be sharing with all our participants. All these recordings will shortly also will be available on YouTube. We will share that YouTube link also with all our participants shortly. So, for your preparation for the quiz and test, at least the recordings links which we are sharing, you all can use that for your preparation of the test. Today at 3 p.m., we will be again discussing about your assignments, about your projects, also your quiz test. We all will be there at 3 o'clock, connected, me and my team. So, if any participants have any doubt, queries related to the assignments, projects, quiz, we can resolve and we can discuss at that time. With this, I welcome our today's speaker, Professor Dr. Nimit Gupta. Sir, can we start?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, sir. Let me just give you a brief introduction, sir. It's my honor and privilege to welcome our today's pre-lunch speaker, Professor Dr. Nimit Gupta. Sir is an advisory council for Harvard Business Review. Sir is also a certified case trainer for Harvard and IIM Ahmedabad, certified marketing trainer of Philip Kotler, JGBS certified from AIM SAM MET. Sir is also Google certified for Google Education, CEGR certified researcher, certified SPSS trainer, certified CEGR fellow member. Sir also has to his credit honor code certification marketing analytics from University of California, honor code certification marketing from University of British Columbia, Canada, honor code certification service culture, Kyoto University, Japan. Sir is PhD in marketing, MPhil in marketing, AMT in marketing. Sir is a qualified UGC NET in marketing, MBA in marketing, author of contemporary topical books on permission marketing, case writing on mobile marketing and retail marketing. Sir has published many research papers which is indexed in ABDC Scopus Web of Science. Sir is a speaker, session chair, expert, panel member of our various conferences and seminars for around more than 25 conferences and seminars. Sir has also presented more than 15 research papers at national and international level. Sir is presently a professor and head management studies at School of Management and Liberal Studies. Sir is a chairperson of Research Financial Disbursement Committee, managing research annual budget of around 10 lakhs. Sir is a chairman of Alumni Affairs, managing 15,000 alumni of various disciplines. He is a founder and head of NCRC, NCU Case Research Center. So he is also an executive member of NAC, ARIIA, IQAC, and IIC. So he is a PhD supervisor and member for University Research Board. And the list goes on. We are honored and privileged, sir, on behalf of St. Francis Institute of Management and Research. We thank you to accept our invitation to be the resource person on today's topic, rubrics creation. Over to you, sir.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Podar, for this introduction, and a very good morning to each and everyone who have joined. Right. Generally, what I do when I conduct all these particular sessions, I expect my audience to be very, very interactive. So I request Dr. Podar to please enable the non-muting rights so that they can speak on. And also, if required, you can also put across your viewpoints on the chat, right? So don't assume that this will be a session where I have to speak. All of us will be speaking and we'll be learning together, right? So the idea over here is to learn something new. So please don't be in a passive mode. You all have to be in active mode, right? That is number one. Number two, I expect every one of the participant to at least carry a pen and a paper with them so that we can do certain kind of exercises in between, right? Though the medium is online, but of course the interaction has to be more in terms of offline, right? So on that note, I will be just focusing on by sharing some of my thoughts, and from that particular thoughts we will be moving ahead. I will be asking certain questions in between, and that is how we try to move on with this particular session, which is on rubrics creation, right? And we derive certain kind of learnings from this particular session, right? So I'm just sharing my slide with all of you so that we can have a reference point to move across, right? I hope my slides are visible to you,
Yes, sir, we can see it.
right? Right. Now, if we look across in this particular slide, you can see two important things. One is outcome-based education and another is rubrics, right? Before we come to what exactly a rubric is, any idea what is this outcome-based education? Anyone? What exactly is your viewpoint about an outcome-based education? Any guesses? Any guesses what is this outcome-based education?
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Yeah, outcome based education is nothing but outcome focused education, rather than just teaching the students
Okay.
something which they will carry forward from only
Mm-hmm.
on the theoretical aspect.
Mm-hmm.
This has more to do with the practical aspect and applicability of the knowledge to their future life, their career, etc. So it concentrates more on the outcome, and this we can get by mapping it correctly with the vision and mission of the organization, the POs, COs, and the PUs.
Great, great. Right. Anybody having any other mode of discussion? Anybody else?
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Yes, sir. As far as I understand, the teaching and the learning method, what we are providing to the students,
Mm-hmm.
it should not only syllabus centric and only limited up to the mark sheet that they will be getting. It should be
Mm-hmm.
applicable after they come out with flying colors by passing the course. That should be the outcome. How they are applying that particular thing in their professions. That much what I understand.
Okay, great. I'll pose my next question. As a faculty, as a
Sir,
teacher,
sorry to intervene.
yeah,
Few of the participants have put their comments in the
on
chat.
the
I'll
chat
read
box,
out,
right?
sir, for you. Yeah,
Right.
education system where focus is on what learners will be able to do or apply professionally and not just understand. It is by Dr. Shripad, and Dr. and Professor Sean has posted beginning with the end in mind, forming a session plan with the intended outcomes in mind.
Great.
Dr. Hemant has mentioned they can be employable to industry.
Okay. Right. So my next question, as a faculty, we teach, right? As a student, what is the output what we look for? As a faculty, it is very clear, roles are very clear, right? As a faculty, we are supposed to teach, right? Research, consultancy, everything comes across. but we are supposed to teach. That is a primary goal, right? What is student expect to do? What a student is expected to do? Any guesses?
He is supposed to learn it, imbibe, and use it practically.
Perfect. So there is why we call it teaching learning process, right? That is mean that it is not only the faculty, but the student has a good role to play, and that is a teaching and learning both comes hand in hand, right? So the entire model of learning based outcome or outcome based learning is on the philosophy that a student should learn. That will happen only when a faculty will teach. But at the end of the day, when you're done with the syllabus, curriculum, whatever you have drawn in terms of session plan, you must be aware that what should be the learning, right? So understand, I teach, but I'm not aware that what I taught was grasped by the student in the right spirit, number one, by all the students, number two, and in the similar manner in which I want to teach them, that is number three. And the moment it happens, the learning becomes an important and integral part of it. Right? I'm going to my next slide, and I'm hopeful that everybody of you will agree to this particular thing. We see lot many news where we say that the students are not employed, right? They are not in terms of the quality or in terms of rigor when it comes to employment. So we see unemployment statistics is going high. We see that there are lot many people, but they are not skilled enough, right? So this is a general phenomena which is happening. And primarily, the reason lies out here because we teach, but we never look for that whether the learners are learning or not. The moment we see that whether learners are learning or not, we are able to move up the things in this particular regard. Let me give an example. And by this question, you are supposed to give me the viewpoint. Do you think every time when you teach a same course, after every semester or after every year, the type of learners are similar or they changes? The types of learner will remain same or they
The
change?
changes.
They changes, right? And the change can happen in terms of their gender, change can happen in terms of their income level, change can happen in terms of their knowledge level, change can happen in terms of their attitude level. That means I am teaching something without knowing who is the learner. Agree? So I am saying that I have one size shirt which fits for all. But in education, it doesn't happen, right? And that is why when we design our curriculum, we should know who is our audience. We should know who is the learner. And keeping that particular learner into mind, we have to change our learning styles, learning curriculum, and everything. For example, what I was talking to you earlier, we all are aware that IIMs have a very good first placement record and everything happens for that matter. But understand that in IIMs, most of the students who are coming up from engineering background. That means they're good with mathematics. They're good with logical reasoning. But over a period of time, if you see, and which is happening, that more and more students are coming from other domains, whether it is arts, whether it is management, or whatever. So what is happening that the learners' profiles has been changing. It is not the same learner. So a learning should be focused on depending who is your audience. And that is the reason when we look across, we have the concept of knowing the understanding, knowledge, skills. I hope you have read all these things with reference to your previous sessions in terms of a Bloom's taxonomy. Yes, I'm right on that. Yes, you have been exposed to Bloom's taxonomy, right? In the previous
Yes,
sessions, right?
Yes,
yes,
sir.
Where,
Yes,
yes.
sir.
right, 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 where we have the different aspects which move from starting from whether a student is able to remember, and the highest level is where we can go for creation, right? Why I'm sharing all these things so that everybody is of us on the same page, and then I can build upon the blocks, right? So understand that when we are moving from remembering to creating, do you think that every learner is absolutely focused right from the lower level to the higher level? It is
No.
not. It is not. Right? So, as a instructor, as a facilitator, as a faculty, as a teacher, we have to look who is who so that we can provide a different kind of approach to that particular student. And that is the reason when we look upon the entire funnel of an outcome based education, it encompasses so many things, right? Do you agree with the learning cycle? I am sharing my screen with all of you where we have a learning cycle. Do you agree that this is the right learning cycle? Where we start with the content in terms of that what should be my contents when I teach a particular course. Like I said earlier, these contents differs across the years, across the semester, across the profiles. For example, if I'm teaching a course X to the UG students versus the same course to PG students, do you think the curriculum remains the same? Of course not. That is my content, right? So before we develop a particular curriculum for my students, I should know who are they, what is their expertise level, right? From which particular background they are coming up, whether they are familiar with particular things or not, whether they are mathematically sound or not, whether they are good in quantitative techniques or not, and accordingly the things will differ, right? And after I know what is my content, the next thing becomes pretty much important, which is my delivery, which means how I share, how I teach this particular content to them. When I'm saying content, it is what exactly I want to deliver, but I can deliver the same thing using a lecture method. I can develop a case for that. I can use simulation. I can have an industry expert who can do the same. So there are various ways by which I can share this particular content with my students. This is particularly what we call as a pedagogy, where I use different pedagogical tools in order to share my viewpoints with my learners altogether. Right now, over here, if you look across with reference to either content or delivery, do you think that in both these scenarios, the learner becomes the very important aspect? Agree?
Yes,
Agree? Right?
yes.
Now, at this particular level, when you have a content and a delivery, you know that you are teaching, right? You develop content, you develop the pedagogy. Agree? So you're able to see that this is how I teach. How you ascertain that what you teach using XYZ method is learners learning. How do you engage? How do you know that learners are learning or not? How do you engage in terms of how do you know that learners are learning or not? Any guesses?
Through class participation,
Participation, yes.
Okay, that is
then
a very,
maybe
yeah.
through interim assessments,
Hmm. So if
case
I ask,
studies.
right, so if I ask, for example, in a typical 100 marks course, we conduct a quiz or a test after a month. And out of this particular 10 marks, we see that majority of the students are only scoring 4 or 5? Is there is a learning disconnect?
Maybe there is an
Yes.
analytical problem or
Right.
application of what has been learned.
Right. So that anything of that particular assessment as an analytical perspective, it can go wrong in either of the two or both of the two. In terms of A, my content was not appropriate, or B, my pedagogy was not appropriate for them. Agree?
Yes.
Right? So when I'm looking for designing my assessment, we have to be very, very critical in terms of that what exactly should I look for? Right? Now understand, I give you one example in this particular regard. I teach marketing, right? So in marketing, uh, let's say if I want to develop an acumen in my student that they can analyze what will happen in the market. I give you one example and then we can go ahead, and I'm giving a very real life example. How many of you know a brand called as Reliance?
All of us.
If all of us, right?
Yeah, all of
Reliance,
us.
yeah. Reliance is into a particular business vertical which is called as Reliance Retail, right?
Yes.
We all know that.
Yeah.
The profits of Reliance
Mhm.
for the 22-23, that means the quarter which ended on 31st March, they have said that we have a profit of 2200 crores. Reliance Retail has a profit of 2200 crores, right? So this is one. If I ask my student that Reliance profit is 2200 crores, do you think that because of this 2200 crores of profit by Reliance in terms of retail, India's retail is gonna change in the coming years? Do you think Reliance will be more powerful?
So it depends on the market position of Reliance Retail,
Okay.
whether it's a market leader and who are the
Hmm.
peers who are competing with it, what are their strategies. There are lots of factors.
Agreed. Right. So understand that my content which I want to share with my student was market competition. Now you can gel with it.
Yes.
I want to share what exactly a market competition with my student. I
Mhm.
discuss this particular case in the class. That is my pedagogy or my delivery. And now I give them an assessment for Starbucks versus Cafe Coffee Day or any particular competition which is happening. Right? So what generally happens from my experience that when a faculty teaches with reference to content and delivery, the assessments are totally disconnect. Right? The assessments are totally disconnect. Like you have the Bloom's taxonomy. I'm again coming back to Bloom's taxonomy. Like you have a Bloom's taxonomy which focuses on remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. In a similar manner, your assessment should be such which also caters to those particular things. For example, in a question paper, when we look across, the moment I ask a question, do you recall five big competitors of retail in India? It is merely a recall. Remember, I'm not asking them to create something new. If they know, they know. If they don't know, they don't know. That is a remembering, right? The moment I say that analyze the competition in India, I am moving from remembering to the analysis. Are we able to see that difference?
Yes.
Right? For example, if I look across and I ask a very basic questions for our understanding, that a question goes like this: out of the two, which is more hotter, sun or moon? Of course, student will give the answer as sun. I'm not asking why sun is hotter, why moon is not hotter. So that is a mere remembering. Of A, B, C, I am moving from remembering to the next level. Are you able to see that? I'm moving from remembering to understanding. And then all the things will come into picture for that particular matter. So drafting an assessment is a very, very important thing. So in most of the good universities, including our university, what we do, whatever assessment component we look for, we map it with learning outcome. I hope you know what is a learning outcome, right? For example, if your learning outcome one is there, so every assessment component should have a learning outcome, which can be LO1, LO2, LO3, or whatever. Now, in the similar reference, I give an example so that we can correlate. For instance, in my marketing course, my last learning outcome, that means learning outcome number 4 is student can create a retail marketing plan. Student can create a retail marketing plan. Now to understand that whether student has learned or not, the last retail outcome, I say develop a retail project report. The moment I say develop a retail project report, I am trying to look forward for that particular assessment, which is related to learning outcome number 4. Are we able to understand this thing? That developing an assessment is very, very critical. Don't assume that the job is over once you deliver a session and once you have a good content. The actual learning you can test when you have a right assessment tool. Broadly, if you look across for NAC or NBA in terms of accreditation, they check this particular thing, that whether assessment component is in mapping with the content as well as with the delivery, and that is where the POs and COs will come in handy in terms of its mapping, right? So at this particular stage, the first lesson, first important tip I want to give to everyone, and I hope you all agree, that designing the assessment tool is very, very critical before we go for rubrics creation. Do we agree? Anyone having any particular thought of mine or having any question at this particular point, that having an assessment tool is the most important thing before we go for a rubric creation? Please raise up your hand if you feel that assessment is an important aspect to look forward for the learning based outcome education.
Yes, Pramila ma'am.
Yes, sir. In line with your thought of
Mhm.
going to a creation part of giving up, drafting a retail plan, even
Mhm.
the previous session also, I stressed the point that even in the lecture of consumer behavior,
Mhm.
even if we ask to conduct an interview and develop a buying behavior model with the perspective of the respondent to whom which we have given, we can try to assess the teaching learning process, because just merely teaching the buying decision making model is not an we can say sufficient task on the part of the teacher. The learner may understand it, but to bring it to his we can say the level of creation or the level of application, such type of models, we should think in prior we are making a teaching plan that how I'm going to assess this topic.
Absolutely right. I give you another example and then we can correlate, right? And
Yes.
uh, right. So, assuming that we all are scattered across in different parts of country, we all are familiar with the brand called as Lay's, Lays, right? Which is the
Yes.
manufacturer of potato
Yes.
Yeah.
chips, right? So if I ask that I want to have tangy tomato chips for Lay's, tangy tomato chips for Lay's, which color packet should I buy?
Orange color.
Okay, anybody else?
Red color, sir.
Red.
Red.
Red, red, right? So now
Yeah.
understand that I am a new business. I want to start a new chips manufacturing, and I also make the similar kind of chips, but I don't want to have a red packet for tomato. I want to have a green packet. Does it work?
No.
No, sorry.
Does it work? There is nothing which is mentioned in any of these scriptures or Rigas, Vedas, wherever, that tomato only means red, right? And a packet which is not red doesn't give you a best kind of a tomato chips, right? So what I'm trying to
But
give you is agree,
that's
agree.
how tomatoes is positioned in their mind, sir. That's why.
Absolutely right, ma'am. So what we are trying to do, if I give them this particular assessment, that do you agree or disagree, and then they come up with certain kind of assumptions, they give certain kind of viewpoints, right? And that is my assessment. And that is my assessment, right? So my assessment should be very, very contemporary. It should not be just like putting up the things only in remembering or understanding for that matter, right? So after we go across and I see my assessment, I can see that every learner is not able to learn what I'm trying to give to them. So keeping on that thing, the fourth bullet which we are looking for is that we have to engage. And this engagement is a continuous process. Every cycle, you have different learners. Keeping those learners into mind, your content changes, your pedagogy changes, your assessment changes, and that is what a faculty is supposed to do, right? Once you do that, you're able to showcase that yes, with this particular learner, this is my outcome. For this particular learner, this is my outcome, right? So to cut it short, if we look across, do you all agree with this particular phenomena that when we look across for the assessment tools in journal, we have certain continuous assessment tools and we have certain tools which are end term or midterm based, which are particularly hall examinations, pen and a paper examination, where everybody's gathered together, give an examination. And in a continuous assessment, you have quizzes, case studies, small assignments, short answers, or different kind of retail, in fact, any particular project for that matter. Right? Now, understand that if I have a particular assessment, how I know that whether student is able to learn from it, that comes from my different kinds of rubrics into it, right? And for that particular matter, how many of you agree with this particular thought of line, that when we look across what rubrics is, so we say rubrics is basically an evaluation tool, nothing else, or a guideline, where idea is to understand that whether students are able to meet our learning expectations or not. Again repeating, so rubrics are basically a tool or a set of guidelines to know whether students are able to achieve those particular expectations what we have intended for them, right? Because batch by batch our expectations also changes. Many of us will agree on this particular fact that when corona was in, many of the students have not gone to school, they have learned online had its own challenges. So your expectation, you have lowered down your expectations. Agree? Yes. But now when the normal is back, the expectation totally differs. And that is the reason when we look across, how many of you agree that this is a rubric? How many of you agree that this is what we call as a rubric? This is what we call as a rubric. How many of you agree with this? Please raise up your hand that this is a rubric. Please raise up your hand that this is what exactly a rubric is. Or you can put across in the chat box A for agree, D for disagree. If you agree, type A. If you disagree, type D. And Ratika ma'am will be, in fact, Pudar ma'am will be out here to help us out that do we have more D's or A's. So you have to type A for agree, D for disagree. So Dr. Pudar, any trend which is coming up? Any trend which is coming up? So we have
Yes,
more of
sir.
the,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
yeah.
More of D we have got in the chat. And Dr.
Mhm.
Pramila has put rubrics is more broad.
Okay.
And Professor Sean, like, shouldn't it be more in depth? So most of them have put D.
Hmm. Okay. So if this is D or you don't agree with that, this is a rubric, then what exactly it is? Then what exactly it is? See, learning-based education is very clear. You have to put the onus of learning on learners. That is what I'm
Sir,
doing right
Dr.
now.
Shripad has put its
Yeah.
assessment plan.
Okay. So we call it as assessment plan, we call it as assessment scheme, evaluation scheme. This will give the learners that how they will be evaluated across different assessment tools over a period of time, which can be 3 months, 6 months, or a year, depending upon the program and a course, right? For example, the moment you see over here, this is my typical course of 6 months where I say that you have four different assessments of four different level across the time domain. And in the end, I have an end term examination. So if you look across, the first four, 1, 2, 3, and 4, are something continuous, which is happening across. And the last one is my end term examination, which is a hall based paper, right? Now, if you look across over here, can you think that the learners will behave exactly same across all the different five components? So generally what happens, a student A, he or she scores absolutely high in all the components. And a student who is, let's say, a student B scores all the lowest marks in all the components. If that is happening, it is an alarming situation. If that is happening, it is an alarming situation because every student coming to you comes from a different background, right? And every assessment of yours will be designed in such a manner that there comes a disparity by default because everyone is not able to do everything. And that is a human thought. For example, some may be very, very good when it comes to going to the market, conducting a survey, interacting with people. On the other side, there are certain students who are not very comfortable, they are very shy. They can write absolutely beautifully and they can do good in end term examination rather than in the project. Do we agree? Do we agree?
Yes.
This is what an assessment tool is. So your assessment tool should be such that it should not be biased towards one particular thing. It should give leverage to each and everything so that everybody is able to learn with the basic level and then we can move ahead in that particular sense, right? The moment we have everything focused towards one thing, for example, all my assignments or all my assessments are written, there is no oral component. So understand a student who is very good in writing by default is getting a higher grade, which is not right, right? Depending upon the different courses, your assessments or evaluation should differ so that you're able to learn it out what is happening. Understand and appreciate that why we teach. We teach because we want student to learn. But student is not capable of 100% learning because of so many challenges and barrier. As a faculty, our role is to say that you have learned 80%, This 20% is the gap. If you do X, Y, Z things, you're able to achieve closer to 100. This is what a feedback and a loop closes, right? This is how we are supposed to move on. To understand that particular appreciation, we should know that all these tools will be focused on. Are we clear? Anybody having any doubt? So my second tip, your assessment tools should be very, very diversified. Don't focus on one particular kind of assessment tools across the course, because that will create better in terms of better, and those who are not better, they will remain in the zone of the laggards for that matter. So it's just like what government says, richer becoming more richer, poorer becoming more poorer, right? So you must have an equity when it comes to your assessment distribution. Anyone having any thoughts at this particular point, or any difference of opinion, or any suggestion? Yeah, Dr. Pramila.
Yes,
Sir.
Dr.
Yeah.
Pramila, you can say.
Yeah. I have even typed in the chat box that there should be a room for each student to participate or express their views. Because even if the student is shy, if we make them to present a proposal or present a project, at least the stage fear which he is having for so many years can be break down. And such type of activities do actually groom the personalities. I have experienced it for so many years that we are in women's university, and normally the girl students who are shy, they don't participate in any competitions like. But when we take this assessment or there is presentations like, they are in a group activity to some extent. At least you should introduce a topic, or at least you come in front and introduce the members. That itself is a beginning for those students.
Agree.
So such, yes. So if we
Right.
treat everyone on the equal, try to bring everyone in the equal platform, maybe they are slow learners or advanced or shy. It is the role of the or responsibility of the teacher itself to craft the evaluation or assessment tool in such a manner that everybody gets a chance. Chance in the sense everybody should be put into that system.
Fair enough. I totally agree with your point. See, when it comes to the communication per se, whether it's oral or a written, we assume that the majority of the thing goes with the business communication faculty or a course. But unlikely, for higher education, it has to be an inbuilt part of everything. So in many of the universities, presentations and reports are compulsory irrespective of the course. Right? In many of the good places where I worked earlier and I'm working right now, we are supposed to have cases in the content as well as in the delivery. And we ask student to submit the case reports, present a case, open a case, and a kind of thing. So it totally depends upon that what particular assessment you want to link with. Mr. Grish or Dr. Grish.
Hello, am I audible, sir?
Yeah, yeah, you're very much audible.
Yes, sir. Sir, is there any standard format that mix of the assessment tools we can use then? Because if
Of course, see, there is no
yeah,
format, but there is a whole list where we can use different kind of assessments, and the list varies from course to course, and it
oh,
varies from program to program. For example, the moment we look forward for a engineering student, the lab
mm,
component is very, very important,
yes,
which is unlikely in management, right? So we cannot have a standardization in terms of that particular thing. But my
mm,
big concern over here is that your assessments should be A, staggered. It should not be at the end of the day. It should be continuous. B, it should be diversified in terms of that maybe A is focusing on X, Y
mm,
is focusing on Y and certain of things. And third, your assessments must match with the learning outcome.
okay,
It is just like that. From this assessment, you can see that how many learners are able to get what exactly you want to deliver to them in terms of your own teaching.
okay. Sir,
Right.
but as per the students' ability, that
Mhm.
can we give the different assessment to different students? But if
Of
we
course,
do that thing again,
of course
there
not.
might be student feel that there is a biasness in between them, that some
Yes.
students are getting some other assessment tool.
Of course not. You are not supposed to give different assessment to
Mhm.
different students because you are measuring them with one particular group in concern. So
Oh,
it is different assessments for the same set of group of students. But I'm saying that your assessments should not be of one particular type. It should be
hmm.
diversified within
Okay.
its range, but it remains same for all the particular students who are enrolled in your class. Fair enough?
Okay, sir.
Right. Fair enough.
Yes,
Should we
yes.
make a move? Anyone having any
Yes.
other comments or viewpoints? Right. So once we know that we have different assessment tools, now over in this particular tools, we have to see the different things which happens. Right. Now, for example, when we look across and when we have the discussion happening that madam gives the chance to each and everyone to present. And if I look upon that presentation is worth 10 marks, 15 marks, 20 marks, how many marks should I give to how many students? What should be criteria of saying that this is to be given, this is not to be given? How should I mark a student? How should I evaluate a student?
Parameters. For
Right.
example, for
Hmm.
a presentation, it can
Hmm.
be the subject matter, the
Hmm.
non-verbal aspect,
Okay. So all
communication.
those, right, all those particular parameters I have to define.
Yeah,
Should I share those particular parameters with my students in advance?
I do.
Yes, sir.
We
Before I
should.
conduct a presentation, I tell my class, these are the parameters on which you will be judged.
Okay. I'm just sharing my next slide. Anything which makes happier faces in terms of the first component, what I'm calling as a content. Are you able to see this particular format? This is a snapshot of one of the rubric where I say on the first column, you can see something called as a assessment component, which is content. You can see something called as a weight, which is 2, and then we have 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, right? That means if I look across this particular rubric, any student in terms of content can gain maximum of how many marks? Can gain maximum of how many marks?
5 marks.
5 marks.
5, but my weight is 2,
2.
right? So a student can get maximum of 10 marks. Do we agree? Do we agree? So this is how we create a rubric. In this particular rubric, the moment you look forward with this particular sense, you're able to see that I have different weights. For example, for a slide creation, my weight is 1. That means over the last column, which is marks obtained in content, the maximum marks obtained is 10. On the other side, after the slide creation, the maximum marks what can be obtained will be only 5. Do we
So
agree?
it means these weights are nothing but the times you are talking about. Like if a student is scoring, for example, 4 marks in content, that means the
Mhm.
maximum marks obtained would be 8, right?
No. For content, yes. 4 into 2,
Yeah,
8, right.
yeah. And
But for slide
for
creation,
slide
it will,
creation, it would be 4.
right. Absolutely
Yeah.
right.
So
So
basically, weight is the nothing but the multiplier.
Multiplier, so that, for example, if I look across this particular slide, this is, let's say, I want to see my student who are making a presentation, and if I look upon, can anybody guess if these are the two components of my presentation assessment tool, what is the maximum marks of my assessment? This
so
assessment
there
is
is
worth for
a
15.
15, right? Because there is weight 2, there is weight 1, that means 3. and the maximum one can score is on the range of 5. So
5.
3 into 5 is
Is
15,
15.
right?
Yeah.
So let's suppose my assessment tool is this, where the marks one can score is 15, and within this 15 they can score in two different parameters. One is content and another is the slide creation or a changing, right? Now in this particular regard we can look forward further. Dr. Swati, you have anything to comment
Sir,
on?
one more
Sir,
Dr.
Please.
Karuna has mentioned in the chat, can weights be in percentage?
Right. Weights can be in percentage, but it's always clearer to give these particular weights in terms of the absolute number because it becomes easier. Percentage, you have to again calculate, recalculate. You can do so, but this is more easier, more acceptable norm across the world.
Yes, Dr. Swati.
yes, sir. So I wanted to ask, this weight is given by individual faculty, like it's just their way of thinking, or there are certain guidelines for this as well?
Very good question, Dr. Swati. Now understand that you are the master of your course. You have taught the students, you have developed the content, you have delivered. You know that my students, I want to emphasize more on content. And I said to them prior that I will be marking you more on content because I already know that you are a fourth semester student, you know how to present. So I don't want to emphasize much on presentation. But if it is a first year student, first sem student, I know that content generation will be not so much easy for you. But my idea for that particular first sem is to make you more presentable. So I will lay more emphasis on presentation. So if the same rubric is out there, maybe for a first year, the weight 2 is for content. For the second year, it can be vice versa. So these weights are not standardized. You try to put focus on the weight depending upon the student, which year, their background, your course requirement, and everything for that particular matter. Does it make sense to you, Dr. Swati?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Pleasure.
So it
We
means
have,
like it can vary from faculty to faculty also, right?
yes, yes, and from
Like as
course
you
to
said,
course.
subject, yeah, yes, yes, sir. You were saying course to course and faculty to
Right.
faculty, both it can vary.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, sir.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
We have one more doubt from someone else. I think Dr.
Uh,
Patil has raised her hand.
Dr. Pramila, it mentioned she has put in the chat unit wise. Ma'am, can you unmute yourself and ask your query?
So in rubrics, we are also
Hmm.
supposed to mention the unit or
Not
module.
exact, not exactly,
Okay.
because our focus is more towards the assessment rather than the coverage area. So
Okay.
even if it is coming from different units, it is not much of the concern. It is focusing upon what exactly we want a student to learn from. Any
Yes.
doubts
Thank you,
at
sir.
this stage? Pleasure. Any doubts at this stage? Should we move forward? Right, great. So coming back to the rubrics once again, now we are clear what is assessment component, what is weight, and what is the marks obtained. Now, once I look upon 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, again, there is no hard bound restriction that you should have 5 different classification. You may have 3, you may have 7, right? It totally depends upon you. But the idea is that how you can segregate. Now, understand and appreciate, for example, refer to the content and refer to the last pointer, which is 1 mark, where we say that in 1 mark, content is inaccurate, information is not presented in a logical order, making it difficult to follow. That means any student whose content is not accurate and who are not able to give you the information what is being required, by default they will be scoring 1. Getting a point? So
Um,
as a student, tomorrow I come to you and say, Ki, ma'am, you have given me 2 or you have given me 1. Why? Clearly you say that you fall in this particular category. I've already shared this rubric with you. The rubric says If the information is inaccurate, you will be falling in the category 1.
Channa?
Right? On the other side, the moment you have, make it very clear that the category over here of 5 marks is content is accurate, all required information is presented in a logical order, student can get 5. So 5 being the maximum, it means it is just like you are aspiring for the moon. So the bestest of the things you want should be your highest pointer. And gradually you reduce it down so that student will fall into different categories. Right?
S-
For instance, yeah,
Sir,
please
there
go
is one question by Darshan sir. Can it
ahead.
be different for two faculties teaching the same course?
Absolutely not. Reason being that we all are looking forward for a similar set of students. So rubrics across the world remain same for the same course irrespective of who is teaching which particular section. Right? So rubric should be same so that in general you can have the things to be managed accordingly. Dr. Divya. Dr. Divya has a query, I think.
Yes, Dr. Divya. Ma'am, you can ask your question. Divya ma'am, you have raised. Divya ma'am, we can't hear you. So you can continue maybe
Right,
later
right.
on.
Yeah,
Yeah, we can.
perfect. Right. So coming back to this rubric again, if you look across movement from 5 to 3, you're able to understand that in the 5, we say content is accurate and all required information is presented. Now comes to 3. Content is accurate, but some required information is missing or and or not presented in a logical order. Right? So if you look across, idea is to segregate the different set of expectations that if this thing happen, I will give full marks. If this is missing, I will give 80%. If this thing happen, I will give 60% and so on and so forth. Right? So it is just like movement from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4 and 4 to 5 subsequently. Now understand when we say a newer term, what we call as a proof of learning. There is a specific term called as proof of learning. I am not very sure, but if your institution is going for a international accreditation, whether that will be AACSB or AMBA or any of the similar one, they generally ask for proof of learning. Proof of learning means that for every student, for every assessment, you should have a rubric filled. You should have a rubric filled. For example, if I am a student of your class, so for the same rubric, you will write on the top my name Nimit, my roll number. And for example, if I am scoring, let's say 4 in content, तो जो content में आप 4 वाला column देख रहे हैं, in that particular column, you will click. You will make a right mark or you will make a cross mark depending upon you, so that tomorrow if any particular organization, it's an accreditation agency or a student want to cross check that whether a student has scored this particular marks, what are the rationale behind, you will say this is the rubrics. So I am not subjective. I have not done any subjective evaluation. It is objective. It is known to student that this will be followed. It is known to the student that he will fall in any of the category and kind of. It is just simply like when we go for watching a cricket match. So if a ball is going in air out of the boundary, we call it 6. And if it is going within the ground surface, we call it as 4. It is as clear as it is. So it is just like you are making the rules of the game known to the audience before the game starts. A. And once the game starts, everybody is known, everybody is aware that what should I score. So tomorrow a student comes to you and say, I have not scored well. Agree, but this is the areas where which are your missing areas. So tomorrow students come to you and say, ma'am, what is my feedback? Or sir, what is my feedback? What are my improvement areas? For example, if a student has scored somewhere in 3, you can say the important areas is that you are not able to provide the right information because you have said information is missing. There is no logical order. You are not making the order correct. You are not following the sequence. So by default, your rubric is providing all such feedback to the student. So in many of the good universities across the world, where student strength is very much high, it is not possible sometimes to meet one-on-one. So rubrics will give that particular leverage to the student in a bigger sense. Dr. Sean has certain query, I
Yes,
think.
and Dr. Divya has also posted her two queries in the chat. First, let me
Mhm.
read. If Sean sir
Right.
has posted in chat as well as he has raised his hand. Dr.
Mhm.
Divya has posted, do we need to justify every mark? Content for 2 marks and 1 mark seems very similar. Instead, can we put just marks 3, 2, 1 for content and good, average, bad? This is what he's her comments in the chat box and her query.
Right. Ma'am, a rubric by default should be very, very elaborative. Number one. And number two, it should remove the scope of subjectivity. Right? For example, if I see Dr. Podar is wearing a dupatta which is of orange color, right? Right, ma'am?
So somewhat red
Right?
and
Somewhat
some
red and
orange.
orange,
Yeah.
right?
Yes,
Right?
yes, sir.
I don't like orange color, perhaps, but ma'am likes orange color. So ma'am's orange is good, my good is not orange. So when we say good, average, bad, we are becoming a victim of subjectivity, right? So we should be in a position to remove that particular subjectivity. So instead of writing good, bad, average, we should specify. For example, if information is not in flow, the same information is not in flow from your perspective as well as from my perspective, right? So it should not be yours good or my is good, right? So we should not be putting it very, very abstract. We have to make it more elaborative, more explanatory, and it should encompass each and every minute detail wherever possible. Believe me in, for the very first time, for the very first course, you will spend hours in creating rubric, but the next time, the same rubric you are able to modify for your course. It is a matter of only one course. And the generally you all agree that when you make a shift from brand X to brand Y in your teaching fraternity, right? The general notion is that if you have good ABDC or a Scopus, there is some quantification that you are a good researcher, right? For example, if I say uh, I have papers, not an example, this is a fact that I have papers in A category, B, C, right? So recruiters say that yes, you have good papers in good journals, you're a good researcher. What about a good teacher? How can you quantify that you are a good teacher? It is something which people will see from the experience once you join the organization and blah blah blah. But all these rubrics will vouch for you, right? So whenever you go for an interview, always carry a course file, which includes your content, your pedagogy, your sample rubrics. That this is the bundle, this is the file, this shows how I teach,
So
right?
Sean sir has also put, can the rubrics for the same course taught by the same faculty
Mhm.
change based on the batch, like different for
Yes,
21 and different for
yes,
22?
it must be because your learners are not similar across. Learners changes, right? And on that particular learner changes, you change your content, you change your pedagogy, right? So it is just like if we have moved from 50 over match to 20 over match in IPL, right? We cannot have the same set of rules in both the formats, right? So depending upon your batch size, batch configuration, of course, the thing's gonna change in this regard, right? Anyone having any other query, or should I make a move?
So you can continue.
Sure, right. So coming back on this particular thing, now if we look across, there is a query that 1 mark and 2 mark is almost similar. If we look over here, there is a difference which says content is inaccurate and content is questionable. Inaccurate means that you have given wrong information. Questionable means that your content is subject to certain kind of assumptions. For instance, if you say that Reliance, for example, if I go for a retail project report of my student and a student submits and says that Reliance is not the market leader, this is inaccurate information. On the other side, the student writes that Reliance is a market leader with this particular kind of standing. That's questionable, right? So that is where we have to define it out. A and B, when we look across, it is a movement. See, at the end of the day, across the world, there is nothing called as 100% objectivity while it comes to evaluation. As a faculty, we all are human, right? So of course, we have certain kind of biasness which happens. In many of the good places, we try to not to have the student name on the assessment sheets. It is coded so that no biasness can happen. But on the other side, if I look across, the movement from 1 to 2 or 2 to 3 is moving in such a manner that can I give 1.1? Can I give 1.2? Can I give 1.5? Right? There is nothing like that you cannot give 1.5. It is not only 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. It can be somewhere, as a faculty, you feel that the answer is not accurately 2 and it has moved from 1. So it is beyond 1, but not as perfect for 2. So you can give 1.5 as well, right? So that is where we have to dwell on, and that is where your actual role of a teacher will come on. So many times when a uh, uh, question comes that can technology replace students, so this is my answer. Technology can give you rubrics, right? Technology can do every content for you, but 1.5 is right or 2 is right, perhaps a faculty can better judge rather than a technology in this particular regard, right? Anyone having any other question? Right. So perhaps moving ahead, when we look across, I will give you the another sample for rubric creation, which is a little bit different and refer to the second component over here for assessment, which is level and frequency of interaction with faculty mentor. Right now over here, if you look across with certain kind of things, which says a self starter in regular touch for guidance, responded with work on suggested lines, and presented very good quality work. Now, over here, if you look across, the focus is a regular touch. The moment I am saying in a regular touch, I am again coming back to the subjectivity. Yes. So this is an example where we can improvise, and I'm giving you this example to the content. Now, if I, instead of putting across regular touch, if I've written at least 8 to 10 meetings, objectivity becomes higher. Agreed? Agreed? So if a mentee is coming to you at least from 8 to 10 times, you can put him or her in the 5 marks category depending upon the other sub criteria which are involved. So the idea behind is that more and more objective you are, better and better your rubric is. The moment you have a subjective component, it will be more harming instead of helping you out. Similarly, if you look across over here for the first of this particular kind of component over here, right, which is saying work performance and application of learning, right, refer to the fifth marks, which says able to capture issues of the project in the proposal, collect relevant information, applied classroom knowledge, followed the guidelines for preparing project. Right now, over here, if you look across, the guidelines for a project preparation is all well written. Are you following or not following? That is the only condition. Similarly, classroom knowledge application is something what you can also check. So idea over here is that whatever we do, it should be scribbled down in a manner that we are able to have student in any of these particular column, so that tomorrow you are able to see how many have learned in which particular reference. For example, if I say on a batch of 60, most of my students are getting 4 marks. That means that is a learning for me that many of the students are not able to focus on the 5 marks. That means that they are not able to follow the guidelines. If you see closely between 5 and 4, the broad difference is not following the guidelines. Do we agree? Right? Is broadly not following the guidelines. So what should be my strategy for the next batch for this particular thing is that I should give more emailers, more reminders about the guidelines, so that next time more and more students will go in the category of 5 marks. Idea is not to give marks. Please appreciate that. Idea is to make them learn in the similar manner what our expectations is. Right? In many of the good places, instead of marks, we write points. Right? So that it is just like where you are in that particular capacity with this particular regard. For example, many of the results when we see are either absolute grading based or relative grading based. I hope you understand the difference between the two. In relative grading, the grading is being done in a manner that how others are scoring in a class. It is not on the basis of who has written what. It is, of course, on the basis of rubrics only, that this is my expectations. Now, I'm asking certain questions. Is it possible that you developed a particular rubric and you don't find any student qualified for 5 marks? Is it possible? Of course, it is possible. You don't find majority of the students in the 1 mark bracket. Possible, right? So the rubrics is having a two-way aspect for you. Number one, to understand that how much student have learned in your course. This is the proof. And second, it is providing you the ready-made solution of how to improvise your course for the next time learners, so that more and more students are able to learn in the highest order. I'm not saying highest marks, I'm saying in the highest order. Appreciate that as a faculty, what is our role? Our role is everybody will get everything what I teach. This should be our role. This should be our perspective, that everybody will be able to get everything. But practically, that is not possible. So we try to look for the bestest what we can do. And that best is what we can derive from these particular kind of rubrics which is being out there. So my suggestion and third tip, and perhaps the last tip, is that as a faculty, spend more and more time on developing rubrics. So what I suggest as the initial action line is that for one particular course, identify any one particular assessment, one particular course, identify one particular assessment, and try to develop a rubric. Try from there. Next semester, next year, same course, second assessment, third assessment, right? So what will happen over a period of time, you develop a good assessment rubric tool with you, and that you can utilize with reference to your students, and that will give them a fair inclination that there is no biasness, there is no subjectivity, and everything is happening in an objective framework where I can learn what I have been derived in that particular reference. That is how generally we try to look in this particular regard altogether. Anyone having any thoughts, any comments as of now? Anyone having any thoughts, any comments at this particular point of time? Yeah,
It's a
Professor
very
Vishal.
good suggestion, Professor Gupta, like,
Mhm.
maintaining the rubrics and
Right.
improving upon that.
Right. This is
It really works.
primarily, yeah, primarily if we look across the Western countries where students have
Yeah.
more rights, they can sue a
Hmm.
faculty that why have you given me less marks? Rubrics come into picture.
Yeah.
One. And secondly, from our own perspective, it is very important to create a rubric because we all are, by default or whatever be the scenario, are in the process of doing accreditation. But we all
Yes.
are involved in accreditation in
Hmm.
Indian context. So, of course, rubrics is something which all the accreditation agencies are looking out. There is no
Yeah.
way other than that.
Sir, it also
Yeah.
promotes transparency
Absolutely,
to the
yes.
students. And number two,
Mhm.
supposing a student in the first assessment gets 2 marks, he knows where he has fallen short of
Right,
and
right,
can always work harder towards 4 or 5 marks, by
right,
looking at the rubric shared with him.
right. And over the period of time, when you can always see that how student have progressed in your course.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely.
For a assessment one, it is maybe two. For two assessment, it is three. So you can see how gradually student has progressed.
Progress. Yeah. Thank you.
Uh,
Pleasure.
so in the
More
chat we
than
have.
that,
Yes, ma'am.
sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead, ma'am.
More than that, I feel rather than writing good, very good, excellent, you
Mhm.
know, it's much better when you measure that in figures. So, it's easier to explain.
Absolutely, yes, no doubt.
Yeah, there, it scores above all.
Absolutely, no doubt. It is a
Yeah.
very
Thank you so much.
objective way of making the things clearer to them.
Yeah.
So in the chat, I guess Vaishali ma'am has asked her question already. Divya
Mm.
ma'am has posted, should rubrics be created for internships and project submissions?
Everything, whatever you are assessing, should have a rubric. Whether it is a continuous assessment, end term, summer project, minor project, or an interaction which is happening, everything should have a rubric because that is the playground you want to give to your student, that how you will be assessed. If they are not able to know that whether they are assessed on a particular parameter, you cannot assess them. For example, let's say if there is a presentation, do you think that a student who is well dressed should be given more marks? If yes, your rubrics must say that. If no, your rubrics must say that. Right? So if you feel that a student's presentation should have a good attire of a student, you should always have a one component, maybe of one weight or zero point 0.5 weight or 2 weight, depending upon what your objective is. We have two more queries, I think.
Yes, sir. So Professor Vaishali ma'am has asked, can we make this assessment component of our own?
Absolutely. You are the master of the course. You have to define everything. Right from the starting of a course, you have to define that how I will be assessing and when I will be assessing and how I will be assessing them using rubrics. And generally, it is a good practice to share these rubrics with the students before assessment start
Okay.
so that they can also know that on which ground I will be assessed.
Sir, we have one more hand raised. Dr. Ansha Gupta, you can
Yes, ma'am.
ask your question, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Sir, just suggest me whether I am correct or wrong. I just wanted to know whether we can keep it like, for example, any course, if they are going to take PowerPoint presentation, can we take the same assessment component? Can we keep it as standardized that whenever you are assessing students for PowerPoint presentation, these are the assessment component for which you should look after for any students?
See what happens that at the very starting time, when you give them that this is on the way I want to make you assess, and after 6 months you want to assess on the same, what is the new learning? What is the new learning? Right? So gradually, when you move ahead in your course, in your program, the rigor of the rubrics becomes more stronger. For example, a student who is doing the PowerPoint presentation for the very first time, he or she is bound to have certain kind of mistakes, but he cannot expect the same mistakes after 1 year, right? So the marks, let's suppose you will be giving 2 if it is a slight mistakes. Perhaps when they go in the final year, I say even if a one mistake, it is 0, as clear as it is. So it depends upon how much rigor you want to put in. I hope I've answered your
Okay.
question.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
So we have question from Divya ma'am. When evaluation is done by external examiners, can the in-house faculty make and share the rubrics before evaluation?
Yes, they should, and they ask the external expert that this is the rubric I have created. I expect that you should go with this particular rubric, make changes if you want to do so, and share the final rubrics with me.
Okay. Sir, even Sean sir has asked one question. How can we prevent poor rubrics formation? Lenient rubric for 5 marks or extremely stringent rubrics for 2 marks?
Right. So the best way out is to help each other, right? So what I generally do in my course of action, whatever I do, I share with my colleague who can be my next door cabin owner, or maybe in a faculty meeting. Generally, what we do, we used to have something called as a brown bag sessions. Brown bag basically means that it is a US concept that you come up with your own burger in a brown bag, which is a paper bag, right? So a brown bag session is maybe a faculty is meeting after every 15 days for half an hour or 1 hour, and everybody is sharing their rubrics to everyone. So if I share my, you say, this can be edited, this can be added, this can be deleted. So it is always a good idea to take everybody's input, because while developing a rubric, I may have biasness, right? And that is one. And second, if you're as a faculty, you might have your program coordinator, you might have your dean or HOD, take his or her suggestions as well. That can also improvise the same thing.
Okay, I guess no more questions, so we can continue, sir.
Right. So I've given you basically three different tools for rubric creation, right? And I'm giving you the last step in this particular regard in order to make the things very clearer, right? Where we started right from the upfront, that most of the things when we look across are focused towards one particular thing, which is the assessment of everything. Now, over here, try to look forward with this particular cycle once again, where we have a content, delivery, assessment, and engagement. And that is what the loop we have to close, right? So every time when you do the assessment, you're able to learn that in this particular manner, student needs more engagement, which can be that for this particular component, I find many of the students struggle to learn. So perhaps A, my content was too much. B, my teaching style requires different kind of teaching, or maybe both. So that is why, as a faculty, what I suggest that in your course file, year after year, you should have these particular learning cycle, because that will vouch for you that how you improvised your course over a period of time, and in this particular evaluation, you also evolved as a teacher, right? Always, in fact, every one of you appreciate that when you started the very first year of your teaching versus 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, whatever, you have evolved, right? That evolvement should be documented, and that document should come from this particular cycle where we can look forward with this thing. So my suggestion should be that A, this particular cycle should be there, and B, please take a printout of this Bloom's taxonomy, a very, very good document. Please take a printout, post it where you can see maximum, And whenever you draw the content, pedagogy, or assessment, always look to it and see whether all these threes are in line in sync with what I'm doing. Is it not that I have taught from a remembering perspective, but my assessment is more of analysis, or vice versa? Right? So if you look across with this particular sync, most of the things will fall line in place. Right? So this is my last point of tip to all of you, that enjoy teaching. Right? We often are being involved in so many academic administration, research, and everything. But the moment you enjoy your teaching, that is what exactly happens. After the 20 years of experience into academic administration, research, and everything, the most lovable part of my day is when I'm in the class. Right? So that is what we have to do as a pride, as a teacher, that over a period of time we are giving the less importance ways to teaching because of so many reasons. But let's revive that particular era where we are more of a teachers rather than anything else. Right? So on that particular note, over to Dr. Podar for her comments.
I totally agree with you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, for your wonderful and informative session. I hope by this time we all have got some ideas about how to create rubrics, because, sir, we have given them one of their assignments, which is a part of the evaluation,
Mhm.
to make rubrics, picking up any one of the assessment tool as a assignment to them.
Great, great. And my numbers and email is already there. But in case you have any particular query, please feel free to have a discussion with me. I prefer if you WhatsApp me by giving reference that you're coming from the FDP, from the St. Francis institution. But always come back to you and we can have a joint mutual time where we can have a discussion on the same.
So is the contact
Yes.
connect number correct, sir?
No,
Yes.
there are only 9 numbers.
Oh, no, it is not. Let me check it. Are you able to see that?
Yes, got it, sir.
Fair enough.
955.
Yeah.
Any questions from any of the participants?
I hope I am able to give you a new knowledge and a learning.
Absolutely, sir.
Great,
Wonderful
great. My
session.
pleasure. My pleasure. My pleasure.
Um, Yes, we don't have any questions, sir, in the chat, nor
Okay.
from any of the participants. They have raised their hand. So I guess there are no questions.
Great. So we are able to wind up the session
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So
on
on
time
this note,
almost.
sir,
That should
yes,
be
sir.
that should
We
be
thank
the
you
right
on
amount.
behalf of St. Francis Institute of Management and Research for accepting our invitation and sharing your valuable knowledge with all of us, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for such an insightful session.
Thank you so much, Dr. Padar.
My
Good
pleasure,
day,
sir.
good day, everyone.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Thank you.
And we have shared the feedback link in the chat box, as well as we have mailed it in your respective registered email ID. So you will be able to fill the feedback form also as per your convenience. I hope everyone has received it. I have posted again in the chat box. We have also mailed the yesterday's recording with you all for the pre-lunch session, which we received today from GAD TLC, and we have shared with you all those recordings as well. Yes, Sunil sir, you have raised your hand. Sunil sir.
Madam, chat box is not visible to us.
Sir, since you have joined as a guest, it is not visible. But sir, because you have not joined with your registered login ID and password, which we have mailed y'all.
Oh,
But then anyway, sir, I have mailed y'all the feedback link at your registered ID. With that, sir, you can give the feedback.
madam, where email ID and chat box ID will be there?
Sir, what, sir?
Where is login ID?
The login ID password is in your mail. We have mailed y'all before our day one session, which started on 5th of May, sir. We have mailed y'all. The title says login details.
Okay, okay.
And sir, you can even get in touch with our IT person. We have given the number also to y'all. So you can be in touch with him if you are unable to get connected through your login ID and password.
Okay, madam, sure.
Yeah. So, but we are mailing you all everything at your registered ID also. There is no difference
Okay.
if you join with the guest or as your with your login ID and password. Only difference like chat, you cannot give respond to it as well as the folders. You are unable to view if you join as a guest.
Okay, madam.
Hello, this is Prakash Lalmani. Still, anyone is having any issue regarding login credential and all that, please let me know on WhatsApp. We can handle it today itself, and I think everybody become as a participant with us. So this is my request to you. You can WhatsApp me immediately. I'll send you the user ID and password, and you can log in easily on that one, so that you can share everything on the Microsoft Team.
Yes, sir. Sunil, sir, I hope you got it because out of 86, 87 participants, only 25 people are joining as guests. Remaining all are able to join with their registered ID and password. That is, maximum people are able to join with it now. So, Sunil, sir, you can get in touch with our IT head, Mr. Lalwani. He will resolve your query, sir.
Okay, from day I join directly this session, madam.
Yes,
Without
sir.
from the first day I joined this session without login ID. So
Sir, that is okay. First day, it is fourth day, then also you're joining without login ID and password. Sir, as I informed and repeatedly, I am announcing also, there is no harm if you join as a guest or as a participant with your login ID and password. Only difference with both is you will not be able to put your comments in chat if you join as a guest, and you will not be able to access the folder which is readily available in this LMS platform. Only that is the difference. Otherwise, sir, whether you join as a guest or whether you join with a login ID registered password, that is a rights license which we have given you all so that you can get to know and explore the platform as well. Okay? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You can get in touch with our IT person. He will help you out. Any queries to any of my fellow members? Okay. Yes, Banita ma'am, anything?
No, madam. Today I was able to join with that meeting ID. I think it is visible, no, madam.
No, ma'am. Below your name, still it is coming meeting guest only.
Is it?
You can check.
I have used the IDs and I was so happy that I could that last been able to, but still it is showing
No.
like this.
Yes, yes, ma'am. Login ID and password is in that the mail which we have sent.
Yes, yes,
In
yes.
that there
From
is
there
an
only I have
Excel attachment. There is a Excel
oh,
attachment. Yes, and
oh,
ma'am, against your name, your
uh,
personal ID and login ID and password is there. Ma'am, that means we have given you rights to access a licensed one to this platform.
uh,
That is the difference.
okay,
Uh,
okay, okay. Thank you.
Ma'am, so far, like hardly 20-25 participants, they are joining as a guest. Remaining, all are joining with registered ID and password. And we are actually happy that we were at least able to help maximum participants to
Yes,
get feel
yes,
of this platform also.
yes, yes, yes.
Okay, with this note, I guess we can take a break today. And after like, almost 4 days, we could get 1 hour lunch break today. Otherwise, every day we were getting half an hour, 40 minutes break. So, so today at least we can get 1 hour lunch break. Any queries to anyone? No. So we will get connected sharp at 1 p.m. today for our post lunch session. And I guess so far all the materials and recordings till date, whatever session took place, recording and materials we have shared via mail to you all. And the participants who are joining with the registered ID and password, they can even access to the folder. I will just once again quickly show the access of the folder. Those participants who are comfortable and able to view the folder, they can leave the meeting and they can get connected at 1 p.m. And others, they
Thank you,
can,
Dr. Podar.
yeah, my pleasure, ma'am. So I'll just show I'll share my screen and I'll just show how to access the folder. So this is my screen right now, which you can see where we all are connected. And below, there is another browser, which I click, I can see this. And here you can see FDP program. If you are unable to see any of this, these are the various our channels because we didn't use Zoom or Google Meet for any of our sessions. So if you see so many channels with the batch name and other things, so from past 3 years, we are using Teams only. And if you are unable to see this FDP program on outcome based, click on Teams. When you click on Teams, you will be able to see this FDP program on outcome based education. Click on that. You will be able to see the screen like this. Click on files and you will see here the resource materials which is uploaded and the recordings directly get saved of every day here. Right? So this is
Thank you,
the
Dr.
folder
Pod.
which you can access. My
Thank
pleasure,
you,
ma'am.
Dr. Podar.
Yeah. So
Bye.
that is the difference. Like if you log in with that ID and password, these things are readily available. You need not wait for our mail. But if you join as a guest, so you have to wait till we share the recordings and we share the PPT. So we are trying to give our best, all the comfort, flexibility to all our participants, whichever way you are comfortable, y'all can attend, y'all can complete this particular course.
Madam, now also if anyone is wanted to have any help from IT point of view or logging into it, they are welcome. I can wait for 5-10 minutes more and we can I can explain them what is the
Yes,
issue
sir.
there.
Sure. Yes, sir. Sure, sir. Banita, ma'am, if you want,